So here we can see an overall phylogeny of all of the groups of Animalia, and we're going to go through each of these groups. So all animals share a common ancestor. So back here, this would be to indicate that we are a actual clade. So the most recent common ancestor would be shared with the choanoflagellates, that group that is closely related to sponges. So sponges, even though they don't move or do much, are considered animals because they're multicellular, and they are sister to all of the other groups of animals. So metazoa, zoa typically means able to move, so the entire animal kingdom can be called metazoa. Eumetazoa is everything excluding sponges, so EU meaning true. So eumetazoa is going to include organisms that have tissues and have the ability usually to move around because they have muscles and actual nerve tissues. So right here we're going to see the development of tissues, and then that leads to eumetazoa. So eumetazoa would be everything here from there down. Most animals belong to bilateral. So bilateral here means that we're going to have bilateral symmetry. So everything from here down is bilateral. These two groups here typically have radial symmetry, and then sponges are typically thought to be asymmetric, meaning that they don't actually have true symmetry because they can kind of grow a little bit randomly there. So everything from here down is going to be bilateral. There's three major groups of bilateral organisms. The first here we have is Deuterostomia, and this is going to include the acorn worms, the echinoderms, so our sea urchins and starfish, and chordates. You are here in Chordata. The only phylum on this tree that includes vertebrates is inside of Chordata, so our vertebrates are going to be here. And not every chordate is a vertebrate, only most of them. We also have two other groups of bilaterans, which is the Lophotrochozoa and the Ecdysozoa. And zoa typically is a suffix that means animal. So here we can see these are the three different clades. Deuterostomia, which is going to include us. Here's an example of a deuterostome. This is an acorn worm right there. The echinoderms, and then the chordates, which is you and me. Ecdysozoa, so this is going to include things that excrete external skeletons. So arthropods and insects, things that shed their skin. So here we've got ecdysis, is that process of shedding or molting an outer skeleton. And so this is one of the key characteristics of Ecdysozoa. Ecdysozoa is also based on genetic, all of these clades are based on genetic sequencing to make sure that they are actually closely related to each other. And then the weirdest named clade is Lophotrochozoa. So there's three parts to this. Zoa just means animal. And this is named for two characteristics that are common between organisms in this clade, but not every organism even has one of them. So some Lophotrochozoans have a feeding structure called a lophophore. And this is an ectoproct, so this is a worm, and you can see the feeding arms here that are going to be filter feeding this ocean current. And these can actually be pulled back into this kind of hard tube structure here. And then another character, so that's where lopho comes from, is from lophophore. And then trocho comes from some organisms, again, not all of them, just some, have a trochophore larval stage. So this is a trochophore, and you can see it's got some basic features. Here's the mouth, here's an anus. This would be microscopically small, and there are several groups in this clade that have a trochophore larval form. So this clade is mostly based on genetics and some shared characteristics, but this is a really huge clade, and you're going to see that there's lots of groups of different organisms inside of each of these. It's important to keep in mind that when we look at this tree, the only place with vertebrates is right here. Every single other group on here is in vertebrates, meaning they do not have a vertebral column.